So good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Now Near Next Live from PML Group in association with IMJ AdWorld. My name is Colin Harmon, Marketing Director with PML Group. This is the second of three sessions exploring developments and opportunities for brands on out of home, particularly in the significant weeks and months ahead as society and the economy gets back into full swing. Last week in our Rediscovering Outdoor session, we highlighted some really important factors in outdoors' ability to reach and influence audiences this summer. If you missed it, there is a recording of it available on the News and Views section of pmlgroup.ie. This week's webinar is called The Bridge Between Worlds, and we'll be looking closely at how out of home connects the physical and online worlds and the power of the channel to partner and complement online, mobile and social. We'll also be looking at the power of buses as an advertising medium and see some research on that and discuss how the pandemic has perhaps changed our perceptions of buses and transport formats in general, and particularly regarding their audience. And of course, out of home's power ultimately lies in its creative application, and we'll also be getting important creative insights from today's panel also. And that panel is Antoinette O'Callaghan, Marketing Manager with Exterion Media. So Exterion boasts an extensive out-of-home footprint in both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Their portfolio includes CIE and TransLink transport formats, classic and digital point-of-sale options, roadside billboards and air coach advertising. Simon Killeen is Account Director with Folk Wunderman Thompson. Among the clients on his roster are An Post, Kraft Heinz, Sony PlayStation and DCC. Stephen Wade is Business Director at Initiative. He manages media for clients including Amazon, Green Isle, DBS, Malins and Turkish Airlines. And John McGee is back with us again this week. And John is, of course, editor and publisher of IMJ and AdWorld and a media and marketing columnist in the Sunday Independent also. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Feel free to post any thoughts on today's session to our hashtag NNNLive. And please use the chat for any questions, which we will get to at the end of the session. So John, I'm going to kick off with you first this week, if I can. Some of our focus will be on creative this week, and in order for brands to grow, we know advertising must be noticed and must be memorable. What's your opinion on how out-of-home creative stacks up compared to other media at present?
Well, if you think about it, creativity is our industry's, secret weapon. And, one of our most competitive advantages, because Bill Bernbach, one of the founders of the GDB, once said that creativity is the last unfair advantage we're legally allowed to have over our competitors. And there's a huge amount of truth in that. Creativity, good creative ads land with consumers. They get the brand's message across. They can deliver. Creative and effective advertising can deliver to the bottom line. There's lots of empirical research that shows, the power of creativity in advertising. And I think in an OOH context, OOH is a huge blank canvas there to be exploited by brands in a way that perhaps say press or digital or TV can't. And as you know, there's been lots of developments in OOH over the last number of years, particularly around the area of digital. There's been some really exciting creative work that I've seen, over the last 2 or 3 years, whether it's weather triggered campaigns or contextual campaigns. It's all about, OOH has the ability to, reach the right consumer with the right message at the right time. And this is a very powerful thing to consider in advertising. But it all boils back to creativity, and everything in advertising is about the quality of the creativity and the impact that creativity has on the end user and on, i.e. the consumer.
Great, thanks, John. It's an opportune time to bring in Simon Killeen. And Simon, welcome along. I've often heard it say the creatives love the purity of the out-of-home canvas. Is that the case with you and your agency?
Good morning, and thank you for having me along, Colin, and hello everyone. Yeah, absolutely. I think John even kind of touched on it there. Like, traditionally, out of home as a format has always been something which creative agencies in Ireland have loved to see as part of a media plan, or as I've always brought forward for campaigns as a suggestion. it's a fantastic way traditionally to bring, a single-minded message or a brand to life in a really succinct and clear and really smart way. And that's from a traditional lens. I think the last few years, in terms of developments and the technology and innovation we've seen come from media owners, has led people to become even more excited, particularly creative teams, in terms of all the different opportunities we now have to bring brands to life and really get those messages clear and across. So yeah.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, we'll explore a bit more on that. Stephen Wade, if we can come to you. Any favourite out-of-home campaigns that you've seen in recent months? I think you're going to show us a couple of examples.
Yeah, there's a couple of examples, and obviously the last 12 or 14 months, it's been hard to escape COVID messaging, but these are two campaigns that tapped into the humorous side of things while still obviously being very relevant at the time. So the one on the left is for Paddy Power, obviously. It's really clear and distinct. Paddy Power, look, as everyone knows, it's very rare they actually get it wrong with their advertising. And this is another example of just really strong messaging. So that's Peter Crouch. For anyone who's not familiar with him, he's an ex-England footballer. He is very tall at 6'8", which happens to be 2 meters. So it's a really clever message where leaving the couch, remember to crouch, and keep your distance and protect our frontline workers. So it's just a really strong, impactful message. And as most people will know, that with outdoor, they say you've got 3 seconds to take in the message, and that definitely will be the case in terms of matching that criteria there with that ad. And then on the right, it was something that people may have seen in one of the PML updates. It was out around last April or May. It's a UK brand called Emily Snacks, who are a crisp brand, and they had planned to run an outdoor campaign as part of a brand launch towards the end of 2019, and then obviously COVID hit. And the gut reaction would obviously be, oh, look, we should probably pull this campaign. No one's going to be out and about in the streets. But what they did instead was a really brave move. They changed up their creative. And as you can see there, our first ever poster seen by a runner and a pigeon, when obviously a lot of people were still sheltering and cocooning at that stage in the first lockdown. So it was a really brave brand decision. And what they did was they obviously tapped into a bit of humor, a bit of empathy at the time as well, through a shared experience, because we were obviously all going through COVID, and it got a huge amount of PR, and it was shared massively across social media channels as well at the time. So I don't know what the actual brand results, what the overall results were, but in terms of what a brand would do for a launch, it was an extremely brave decision. And I think you have to commend the powers that be for taking that decision rather than pulling the budget, which is something that I think a lot of people would have experienced at that time, that the gut reaction was to pull outdoor budgets because obviously people were spending a huge amount more time indoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your point on the shareable nature of the content as well for social is something that that they benefited greatly from, and it was certainly amplified online, and that's a topic we'll come to later in the webinar as well. But just finally then to bring in Antoinette. Morning, Antoinette.
Morning, Colin.
So we saw some figures from Dublin town last weekend suggesting a surge in city centre footfall. Last Saturday, apparently it was on a par with the same Saturday in 2019. So retail is obviously a huge driving factor behind that, and at Exterion you have certainly a very significant retail footprint within the mall environment. So are we seeing that kind of trend from the high street kind of transferring into that mall environment as well?
We certainly are, Colin. I mean, these pictures were actually taken last week, and I had the pleasure of going to Dundrum last Friday and seeing massive amounts of crowds. What we're actually seeing from last Monday, which was the first day of all shops opening for non-appointments, was an 11% increase in footfall in the Dundrum Centre alone, up on 2019, on the same day 2019. One of the things that was quite interesting about the information that's coming out from the malls was that there was significant business being done in men's formal wear, which we might think is a bit strange, but actually we now are in a situation where you can have more than 50 or just about 50 people at a wedding. So this is obviously a significant number of men who are running out to buy the suit to walk up the aisle. So, you know, happy days. And that figure has been replicated across all our malls, you know. I think the other thing that's very interesting, I mean, this time last year, the word essential was being used in all sorts of negative ways. It was essential shopping, it was essential travel, and so on and so forth. But I think one of the things that the pandemic has actually made us understand is that there's more to shopping than just buying groceries. Shopping is actually closer to a leisure activity than we would like to possibly admit. It's getting up, it's putting your nice clothes on, it's going for that coffee. And again, just having a look at what Dundrum looked like last week, this is outside Dundrum. This is the number of people who are just sitting around, having a coffee, having done the mall. I mean, these are malls are basically the microcosm of society. You know, they've got all sorts of everything going on, from cinemas to restaurants to pubs and so on. But I think the other lesson that's quite interesting about what's happened in the retail environment over the last while, and we're seeing this return of long queues. Online has done extraordinarily well during the pandemic. But there's nothing quite like going to a store, a shop, to buy your goods for instant gratification. There's no checking your emails for the delivery man. There's no having to stay in and so on. You get to look, feel and touch the product. So I think those are some of the lessons that we've learned, and why there are so many people flocking to malls and shops and standing for significant amount of times on queues.
Great, thanks a million, Antoinette. And that retail audience certainly seems to be confident and keen to return in large numbers, as we're seeing. You're going to quickly take us through some of Exterion's inventory and tell us about news of an imminent product launch from Exterion as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're extremely well known for the formats we have across all sorts of environments, and that includes roadside retail and the commuter hubs and the stations. And across that, we've got a combination of transport, traditional formats, and obviously digital. And we're also present in Northern Ireland with a similar sort of portfolio. And you mentioned TransLink earlier on. And, you know, not yet seen on the streets are things like impact formats like Aircoach. And that again is down to the pandemic. And they're the kind of formats that we expect to see large movies. So as soon as we're allowed to see cinemas open, we can expect to see those kind of formats come back in vogue. And you mentioned the bridges. Well, come the 10th of June, which is really quite soon, we're launching 4 digital bridges across the city of Dublin. As these pictures show, and we've been testing these bridges since the beginning of the year. We're in Drumcondra, Pearse Street, North Strand and Amiens Street. Each location has its own unique audience and really takes people from right across the cities. North Strand, for example, takes in all the traffic coming in from Howth, Malahide and the Port Tunnel. Drumcondra's bookended by universities, as is Pearse Street, and we would all know Pearse Street quite well. And Amiens Street is right beside the train station there. One of the things about these bridges is that there's nothing quite like them in the marketplace. They're 18 meters by 2 meters, which is bigger than Peter Crouch in more ways than one. And the other thing that's worthy or noteworthy to mention here at this point is that there's a pixel pitch of 6 millimeters. For those who care about these technical things, what that really means is that no matter what the weather conditions are like in Ireland, there will be no washout. So there's quite the significant impact being made, or about to happen next month.
Yeah, definitely. A really welcome development. And Stephen Wade, this exciting development for out of home and further expansion of the roadside digital out of home offering. This is good news for brands.
Yeah, it's excellent news for brands. I mean, one of Outdoor's main jobs is to deliver scale and impact, and I think these 4 bridges in those locations do that in abundance. So I actually already have them planned in for one of my clients' campaigns, so I'm not just saying that. Yeah, I mean, if you take one slot within the loop across all 4 bridges in a 2-week cycle, you're going to get over 100,000 plays, which is absolutely massive. And even though the bridges are in Dublin, I think it's important to note, and this is in the Exterion research that I've read up on there over the last few weeks, is that you're obviously hitting commuter counties as well. So I think when you carried out the research, Antoinette, it was like 19 counties were impacted in terms of people seeing this message. which is massive. So you're not just hitting the Dublin audience. Obviously, in pre-pandemic times, there was a lot more people commuting, but we'd expect to see that increase over the coming months as people make their way back to the office and once the vaccines have rolled out. So that's hugely significant as well. And as Antoinette said, look, there's nothing else like this in the market. And any addition to the digital plant is hugely welcome. So alongside retail and community pods, 6 sheets, and the DX screens, the digital bridges really do add to that digital out-of-home plan that you can plan in across your clients.
And Simon, I suppose developments like this must get the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I have to say, when I first heard of this format and saw some pictures, and I'm not just saying this for the fear that Antoinette might throw something through me at the computer for but like you can immediately start seeing how great some of the work that for any of your brands that you might have, or any brands that you're familiar with, how well they can make this work. Like from an impact perspective, it speaks for itself. In terms of being as contextually relevant as possible, it's really exciting about this new tech and innovation. Be contextually relevant not only to the location, which is amazing, but being time of day in terms of being flexible with the message that comes out with morning, evening traffic as people get back out on the roads with their commutes. And I think in terms of how dynamic it can be, like one of the examples Antoinette pulled up a moment ago was Euro Millions campaign we did a couple of years ago. I can remember my DDF H&B days. Brands rely on being that dynamic in terms of jackpot figures being updated, or weather related messages, which John touched on earlier on, things that require to be constantly fed. You can see how easy it is for even to produce those. So it's a really, really exciting opportunity, I think, for creative agencies.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks a mil, Simon. So buses have been a highly effective out-of-home advertising canvas for many decades on the island, with thousands crisscrossing our towns and cities every day. A recent research study in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland once again highlights the power of this format. So Antoinette's going to tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks, Colm. Yeah, there's not many things that you can say that are very positive about the pandemic, but one thing we can say is that the pandemic actually gave us an opportunity to do this particular piece of research. Without it, without the pandemic, without the lack of advertisers on all out-of-home formats, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so. It kind of started off as, let's do something that's different. Let's put something on our buses that doesn't scream COVID, that doesn't remind us of the terrible state we find ourselves in. We kind of really just wanted to put up a campaign that amused and entertained people as they were out walking the streets of our towns and cities, and not just here, but also in Northern Ireland. And over a course of a period of about 4 weeks, I worked with Ryan Hoy from our Belfast office and some of the team here in Dublin. And we produced a campaign, which I'll just kind of take you through now. Essentially, we created everything in-house. So the idea, and no pun intended, was to put a rebus puzzle where you put some pictures together and you come up with the answer to the problem. We set up our own website, and it was important to us that the most important thing about that website was that it be mobile compliant, given the fact that our buses are mobile and so are our audiences. We attached the website to Google Analytics so that we could just see what sort of traffic the website was actually attracting. And one of the important things about the creative at this point is that the clear call to action was to solve it and not to win it. However, when you did go onto the website, you were offered the opportunity to actually enter the competition to solve it. And finally, at the end of the period when this campaign was live, we actually reached out to our workshop play panel just to get an idea of what people thought about the quality of the campaign, because creativity has been mentioned here earlier. And of course, no matter how much we can do in terms of the formats that we present, at the end of the day, the creative content is significant, to what happens with a campaign. Just a little couple of things about the campaign. I mentioned the fact that we put it together in 4 weeks, and the primary function of this campaign was to entertain and amuse. So we kind of feel we took a bit of a leap of faith. We weren't really sure what was going to happen, which is not quite the same as most pieces of research. With most pieces of research, you have an idea of what's going to come out of the study or survey, and you're underpinning what you already feel. we put our hands up and we say we broke some of the well-known and well talked about out-of-home rules. We had a really long website name. We designed our own logo. We had arguments about some of the content that went up. But the one thing that I also have to stress is that this campaign received no support on any other media formats or indeed on social. So the campaign just sat on its own. Just a little bit about what that campaign was. We went live in Cycle 21, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the outdoor cycle calendar, is between the 5th and the 21st of October. And a quick word about that. We were in level 3 here in Ireland, and they had slightly looser restrictions in Northern Ireland. But as we came to the end of the campaign, Northern Ireland effectively went into lockdown. Here in Dublin, we were in higher levels of restrictions than we were in other counties. We used the 3 framed formats across the TransLink, the Dublin bus and the Bus Éireann fleets. So we were reaching all the towns and cities where you would expect to see double-decker buses bringing people to their jobs across the time. And that was basically it for the full fortnight. Going back to the analytics and what they showed us, we were able to take a look at the respondents. I think at this stage, it's very important that I point out this is the response to the campaign. It is not the number of people who saw the campaign. It's just a response to the campaign. So visits to the website showed us that pretty much there was a laydown of how you'd expect the population of the island to fall out. So we had 62% visited from the Republic of Ireland, with 38% from Northern Ireland, with just over half of that population being between the ages of 25 and 44. So a significantly interesting cohort of people here. Not surprisingly, whether it's because there are more males on the road, there was a slight bias towards males, or maybe that's because more males prefer to answer quizzes than females, and we shall never know the answer to that one. The first thing we started to notice, and we talk a lot about this in advertising, the curve that we would expect to see in JNOR in terms of coverage builds over the first half of the campaign in the first week. But really reaches significant levels over the second week. And this was actually reflected in the campaign in terms of the number of people who visited. So there was a 71% increase in the numbers of people who visited the website in the second week of the campaign, which I suppose is really saying that we need to actually have a certain level of frequency in order that that message actually gets across, and you can therefore take action. The most important and significant thing about this campaign, and it's really what's underpinning this entire session here this morning, is the ability of the campaign to reach people who are using mobile. So 91% of the traffic came from mobile devices. I'm not sure about the other 9%, maybe they were carrying their large devices around, but 91% from mobile devices. And what the data was able to tell us is that the responses to the campaign significantly mirrored the traffic we'd expect to see on the road. And in fact, the traffic that we would normally expect to see outside lockdown and pandemic times. So there were peaks in the morning during morning commutes. The schools were open, so there was a school run thing going on there. But you could actually see the traffic increasing again in the afternoon as people went on lunches, they went on retail trips and journeys, picked up kids from school and started the commute home. And then when we look at the weekend, that traffic to the website is actually reflective of what we would expect to see on a normal weekend of the year, which is the core weekend retail and leisure activity. And you can see it peaking in the mid-afternoon and coming back in again as leisure activity starts taking place. And I mentioned earlier on the importance of creative content. For when we went to our panel, we got a likability on the campaign of about 4 out of 5, which we were quite pleased about. You can see the various metrics that we were hitting. The bright colors caught my attention. That's what we would expect to see. The campaign it made people curious. It was a bit of fun, and the graphics made me want to find out more. So I think the only negative response we've gotten from the campaign was that maybe the clues were a little too hard. So maybe we will take that into consideration the next time we do something like this.
Super. Thanks a million, Antoinette. Really compelling piece on the effectiveness of bus advertising. Might just get some panel reaction to that if I can. And Stephen Wade, if I can come to you. We saw on last week's Now Near Live session, we did a piece on cities and how our cities might look in the future, i.e. less cars, more pedestrianisation, maybe a more social and leisurely type of aspect to them. So from an advertiser's point of view, this could really increase the importance of bus advertising, couldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. We're obviously seeing cities around the country with the easing of lockdown restrictions start to increase outside dining areas in Dublin, and the likes of Dublin, Cork and Galway especially, which is obviously good news for out of home, including buses. I think it's always really important to remember that we've obviously gone through 3 pretty harsh lockdowns. Most people, I think, their feeling is the last one we went through was probably the toughest given the time of year. So everyone's now entering a more positive frame of mind. And when people are in a more positive frame of mind, there's lots of research to say out there they're more receptive to advertising. And with less traffic on the roads, more pedestrianisation and potentially more buses on the roads as well, that's only good news for bus advertising. There's less clutter out there and more time for people to take in that messaging. And I mean, there's lots of research out there as well in terms of like people's emotions when it comes to being receptive to advertising, and from Les Binet and Peter Field. And again, that ties into that. People will be out meeting friends out in outside dining areas over the next couple of months. The hope obviously then is indoor dining will come in as well, which will bring more people into town. So there's a lot of things to look forward to over the next few months. And again, with positivity comes people being more receptive to advertising, which is all good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same could apply to other public transport formats as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Antoinette, the audience for buses, it's never really been just about those on the bus or young people or those based in the city centre, be it Dublin or Cork or Belfast. Do you think, though, the pandemic has maybe raised awareness about the efficacy of bus advertising for a much wider audience in terms of where they are, their location and the demographics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that, you know, if you see any picture of Dublin City, Belfast City, Cork and so on, you will see lots of buses in the city centre locations. But I think, you know, when we started working from home, or significant numbers of us started working from home, and we started that daily walk, we suddenly became aware of the very large vehicle that was passing us by. And I mean, it's important to point out that 70% of journeys of Dublin Bus alone are outside the canal cordon. And the role of public transport is actually to serve the people and bring them from one place to another. But I do feel that, there's become more emphasis on where bus actually goes, and people are suddenly aware of the fact that it's just literally around the corner from where they work, shop and play.
Yeah. Finally, Simon, just buses and T-sides in particular, I would guess they're very much a unique kind of canvas. Some challenges there creatively, but I think formats that are very specific to their environments, they offer great creative potential, don't they?
Yeah, like challenge. I wouldn't say challenge, but sorry, everything should be a challenge, but there's definitely some great advantages that you can take out of the format, as you said, like in terms of being as relevant, making the medium your message, understanding, I suppose, the audience that is going to be interacting and seeing this the whole time. And, you know, it's very important as advertisers and communicators to recognize that you can't just whip up one poster and put it the same messages, the same look and feel across 48, 6s, everything. It's important to be very bespoke to each format that you're working with and recognizing that people are going to be working with that. So, you know, there's some great work that you've seen over the year that is eye-catching, which is really smart, which you can tell isn't just wallpaper or matching luggage. You can see campaigns for job fairs, springboards over the years, the back of the buses, the rear ends, which talk about, you know, people who are sitting behind the bus in traffic. Are you happy with your job? Have you considered a job in advertising or whatever it is that you might want to work into? Or you see great campaigns like what Dublin City Council did a couple of years ago, which was promoting the use of keep cups and making people aware of how bad coffee cups actually are for the environment, the typical ones. And they had Dick written on a tea side and said, "Don't be Dick," really single-minded message. And people got it straight away. Everyone walking to work, seeing these tea sides and going, "Oh my God, what am I actually doing?" So you can make it really smart. I'm sure the ASAI had great fun with that campaign as well, in terms of all the responses they got back from us. But examples like that can be really bespoke and really eye-catching. So I wouldn't say as much a challenge, but more turn them into an advantage if you can.
Super. Okay, guys, we're going to move on. So bridges have been a bit of a theme already in this session, but I'm going to just take a few minutes now to discuss the relationship between out of home and mobile, or out of home and online, I should say, but with a particular emphasis on mobile and how out of home can act as that bridge between the physical and virtual worlds. Out of home, of course, not just posters and screens. It's a TV, it's a content portal, it's a path to purchase, and much more in between. The computers we carry around with us enable in-the-moment responses and consumer action, but only if that value exchange proposition and prompt is compelling enough. So the infrastructure of out-of-home obviously is evolving rapidly. Developments in technology and data have effectively digitized out-of-home's reach. Mobile data such as Locomizer can help us understand consumers' movements and digital behaviors. Relevant data is being used more and more in planning to identify audiences, and using data to plan out of home really optimizes reach. What this means is that brands can target audiences in a more optimized way through content management systems such as Liveposter. So we're in somewhat of a perfect storm now, if you like, in terms of infrastructure, smartphone use, and applications for data, with the software then to deliver the advertising in the right place and at the right time. So I think mobile is really complementing out of home now in two very real ways. The data derived to help us build better campaigns, the plan, and the actions and responses that consumers can take in response to out of home communications via their mobile devices, the action. The figures behind how and where people consume online highlights the power of out of home to prime digital advertising and drive customers online. And so we're seeing really significant numbers now in terms of how people consume online, i.e. mainly via mobile, and the majority of mobile browsing is happening while people are on the go. And that's according to a study from Nielsen from a few years ago. So all this culminates in more and more e-commerce activity taking place via mobile, and therefore while people are out and about. And for brands without a physical footprint in the real world, like online e-commerce brands, they're using out of home like any other brand would to build fame, to reach mass audiences, and make their brands more tangible and familiar for consumers. And we see that across a wide range of e-commerce businesses, such as streaming services for TV, film and music, online retail, food delivery, airlines, and many, many more. Out of home has always been recognized for its ability to drive footfall into retail outlets, as we've seen earlier. But more and more it's proven to be also be exceptionally well equipped to prime digital advertising and drive customers online also. So I think for brands, what mobile has done in an out-of-home sense now is to blur those lines of a classic division between the brand building and activation, whereby certain formats or environments did certain jobs for brands. Purchases, as we know, can now be made anywhere and at any time. Consumers have the ability to react there and then to a communication, be that about what to have for dinner tonight or what TV show to watch on the bus on the way home. At the same time though, have to remember out of home can build mental availability and act as a reminder for consumers for perhaps more considered purchases, such as a flight or annual car insurance. But that final act of purchase is happening more and more via mobile, and that brings us back to the significance of those statistics that we saw earlier on. At PML Group, we did some piece of research earlier this year called React, and that very clearly showed that consumers are aware of their own actions as a result of encountering out-of-home advertising. And those actions are being performed both in an offline and online sense. Different age groups, as you can see here from the chart, more likely to do various online actions as a result of seeing an out-of-home ad. But the share on social piece there that I've just circled is quite powerful across all age groups and points to a definite opportunity, I think, to amplify out-of-home online. And I'll go back to the example Stephen shared at the beginning of the webinar there from Emily Snacks. Had a huge social activity and impact around that campaign. Hence the reason why so many in this market were aware of it. So we think about out of home, it's always been a very powerful creative experience. It can be bold, provocative, surprising, delightful. It can drive customers online to share experiences, to show support, obtain information about products, etc. And if you think about it, social media is all about sharing, the sharing of ideas and experiences with like-minded people. And out of home is highly shareable content. And the fact that it's visual, it can be photographed, it can be filmed, it can be shared in the context for which it was created. So you can film it at the time, at the location for which it was actually created to be consumed. And the content between social and outdoor is comparable, allowing brands therefore to transition between both media. And what better way to show your love of out of home than giving it the ultimate endorsement? And this was an example of a campaign from back end of 2020. Twitter put up some of its most popular tweets, people's opinions and thoughts on 2020. They put them on billboards and murals around New York. The campaign kind of came full circle then when the official, obviously, Twitter handle then reposted images of the billboards back on the network. They also used billboards and outdoor back in September also to promote the wearing of masks across US cities. So I think in the near and the next, we'll see a continued acceleration of technologies that will enable our advertising to be both shareable and shoppable. Continued developments in technology and data doesn't only expand out of home's creative potential to bring these campaigns to life, but they also drive the potential for consumers, for consumer experiences and interactions with brands at scale. And I think digital is having that impact in terms of out of home, that innovation at scale is now much more possible than previously. And we'll look at some examples of those that we've seen recently. And like brands such as Burger King, they've always consistently sought to leverage mobile as part of their out of home campaigns and to bridge that physical and digital world, and using technologies such as QR codes, NFC and augmented reality to do that. And this is a nice example here in the UK, which is running at the moment, and that integrates augmented reality, QR codes and location data. A few good examples here, integrating social activity directly into out-of-home content. So Guinness fused its Instagram and outdoor campaigns by populating digital screens with the results of an online poll which was facilitated by its Instagram account. So those results were represented then in how high the pint glass was filled in terms of a percentage number of people who had said yes, that Ireland could go all the way in the Rugby World Cup. And McDonald's did a similar activation then by integrating live poll updates from a poll they were doing on Joe.ie at the time on whether a Big Mac was still a Big Mac if it had bacon on it. And they were then activated in locations close to McDonald's restaurants. The QR codes are making somewhat of a comeback. The Royal Navy here in the UK in April had a QR-based campaign. So the image of the submarine disappearing below the surface was deconstructed and rebuilt using the structure of QR codes. And once you scan those, then they brought you to the Navy recruitment website. And in this market, in the last few months as well, we've seen HSE use QR codes to guide women to an information page regarding cervical screening. So overall, ultimately, the connection between mobile and out of home is that they're both steeped in location, and that's a really, really important factor. It means it adds relevance, context, and action across the board, really, for when using both together. So smart data-led planning leverages out of home's reach. So perhaps a mobility first approach is the near and the next, as mobility ultimately reflects who the consumer is, what their lifestyle is, and their interests, of course. And ultimately out of home is at the heart of mobility. So that's where I leave the bridge between worlds. I might just turn to the panel then to get a bit of reaction there. And Stephen Wade, if I could just ask you first again. Your agency has a number of e-commerce clients. I'd be interested in your take on the presentation there, and maybe give us some insights on how those particular brands view out of home.
Yeah, so two of the bigger e-commerce clients we'd have would be Amazon and then the Naked Collective. And for anyone who's not familiar with the Naked Collective, within that they've two brands, Mood and SoBeer. And whilst they both be very different in a lot of ways, one thing that kind of links them together is sustainability. Now, sustainability is at the heart of everything that the Naked Collective do. And I know people might be raising their eyebrow going, well, Amazon don't care about sustainability. Every time I get something and get a package, it's wrapped in another huge amount of layers. But it is something that Jeff Bezos, as the founder of Amazon, is very keen to try and work on over the next few years. And they've got a number of climate pledge campaigns coming out around the world this year and over the next couple of years, and he is really committed to it. Obviously, he's got all the money in the world to do so, but he's very aware of the carbon footprint that Amazon leaves in the world, and that hasn't gotten any better over the last 14 months with shops being closed and everyone ordering in off Amazon, who've obviously done quite well during the various lockdowns. So it's something that they're both really committed to. And I mean, what that means for brands in general is obviously reducing paper waste, makes it easier from a production point of view as well, as you're able to swap out copy. And I think that's something that we've seen in the traditional sense as well in recent weeks, just with Nestle, who've been using recycled paper as well for their outdoor campaign. And obviously sustainability is something that's both something that companies are really advocating these days, and obviously people in their personal lives as well, between obviously everything that David Attenborough's doing and Greta Thunberg's sort of leading it as well. So that, I mean, it's not that they're opposed to doing traditional outdoor campaigns, there's definitely still a place for that, but I think digital out of home would always be their focus for the benefits that it brings in terms of the ease of swapping out copy, making it as relevant as possible, as Simon touched on earlier, and making sure like latest deals and offers are out there at that time.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay. Simon, I touched on some of the tech capabilities and or the applications that brands can apply to their out of home, the NFC, QR codes, etc. Do you think there is enough of an awareness in creative circles in this market of those applications? Is that a challenge our sector needs to address?
Yeah, being honest, I think there is a bit more of an education job required. I think in the advertising industry as a whole, there's so many different moving parts and so many different developments for every medium that we all touch every day, which is always very exciting. And I think sometimes all of us as marketeers and communicators and advertisers are a little bit guilty sometimes of thinking of out of home as a very fixed format that probably hasn't moved on that journey, whereas it's far from that. And you've touched in terms of some of the amazing work that you can do in terms of bringing the digital world together with the more traditional world. QR codes, the Burger King example is a fantastic one. I think some agencies and some clients are doing a really good job, but I think we should do more to ask more of ourselves to really explore that territory, because where we have a great name, I think, Ireland, in terms of out of home around the world, in terms of some of the fantastic iconic campaigns and work that we've done over the years. I think we're probably a little bit further behind in terms of the rest of the world where we should be and what we can offer from our creative capabilities. So I think we all owe it to ourselves to probably interrogate it and investigate that a little bit more to see where we can really bring this sort of stuff to the next level for our brands and clients.
Yeah. Antoinette, this is not purely a digital story either, as the bus research that you shared with us earlier has shown. There's a huge role for classic out of home as well in terms of driving response.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, one of the things we're very aware of is that classic out of home is being measured quite significantly in Janor, and we're all aware of how well it does in terms of delivering audiences. And as long as that continues, there will be a place for non-digital out of home. So I think it's important to just make sure that we realize that digital out of home is still out of home. You do not differentiate between your small TV and your very, very large TV in terms of viewing levels. So it's important that we kind of keep our eye on what's working really, really well, and make sure we use it to its full advantage.
Yeah. John, very briefly, I guess no one silver bullet exists in terms of advertising or marketing, and it's that variety and it's that mix of formats and media and you know, those kind of tech applications within media that will ultimately be successful.
Yeah, and I'm particularly excited about you know, the tech piece, as you just referred to, is, you know, whether it's QR, augmented reality, you know, near field technology, even holograms at some stage down the line, I would imagine could play a role. And we were talking about, before this session kicked off, we were talking about Man United. I was over in the Man United Museum in Old Trafford there in December 2019, and there was a hologram of Sir Alex Ferguson in the museum. And I remember thinking to myself, the applications of this in the advertising world will be, you know, for any creative agency looking to do something, whether it's a shopping center or a mall or outdoor, the potential there is tremendous. But I think one of the things about, you know, in all of this, the last two sessions, the importance of research and getting the message about OOH out there and reinforcing the message that OOH is alive and kicking and it's thriving. In fact, and you know, I would expect it to go back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of the investment spend that OOH is attracting from advertisers. Pre-pandemic, OOH was, you know, was growing, I think, in double-digit figures in terms of the investment levels, and I would imagine that will, you know, return, and certainly in the last 2 quarters of this year and well into 2022. But again, the research thing is hugely important, and getting that educational piece out there to advertisers, to agencies, to brands. And you know, I think sessions like this are hugely important. And you know, to commend you Colm from PML, winning the B2B award at the All Ireland Marketing Awards for Now Near Next. I think that's you are to be commended, and PML is to be commended on that. And again, that was a piece of research over a period of time, which was, you know, hugely interesting, hugely informative, and very important to brands and advertisers. And last year, you know, there was lots of companies doing research, good quality research, lots of companies, you know, B&A, Core, yourselves, I think a couple of other agencies were doing good quality market research. But I mean, and I have to commend, as I said, PML on this. And you know, thankfully we worked with you guys on it, and we helped. But it was well deserved, and as I said, it was an important piece of ongoing research, and you know, the industry needs to continue to invest in good quality research in the future.
Super, thanks for that. Lots of notes of optimism there, and that brings us to our final piece today. And I'm aware we're a couple of minutes over, so I'm going to ask the guys to be brief on this one. But our 1 for 21 is the section we end each session with, looking at an opportunity for out-of-home advertisers that perhaps will be somewhat unique in the current year. So last week we looked at domestic tourism, a bit more abstract maybe this week, with something we've called riding the wave of joy. So this is an opportunity for brands to tap into that sense of optimism, hope and joy that research studies are showing is very real among the public. And out-of-home can deliver those messages in or around the environments where these emotions will be so prevalent. And Antoinette, out-of-home in a good place here, isn't it? Visual cues of joy and hope in specific environments to a conducive audience.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. You know, I think we're all aware of the fact ourselves in the out-of-home industry have suffered badly in the last year. But I think there'd be nothing as fantastic as seeing a pint of Guinness on a billboard over the coming weeks, and knowing that we can actually have that pint of Guinness in a glass in a pub, and that it won't be long before we can actually see ads for the likes of Aer Lingus and Ryanair on the sides of buses, and therefore know that that means we are safe to travel. So I think that optimism is out there, and it's part of the congregation that we're all part of now.
Cool. Simon, last word to you. Strategically, do you think that will be a prevailing theme for creatively for brands now in the next few months? And if so, that's something that needs to be handled right, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun ahead for the next few months. I think there's great anticipation, to be honest, about some of the great work that we will see with everything. We're also eager, as we said, to get back out there, as Antoinette said, to have that pint. But I can safely say in almost every research that's been handed to me, we've conducted ourselves, or briefs that have come our way, that the requirement for optimism is massive. You know, we have had a very difficult year and a half collectively as people across the board, and you know, optimism is the way to really, I suppose, be as relevant as we can. People are back out there, people are back seeing things, and everyone's saying the same thing, and that's within all groups and all sorts of research that we're doing as well. So that'll be something which I think everyone should take on board going forward. I would highlight a little bit in terms for brands, supposed to be cognizant in terms of to know your role when it comes to the optimism. Don't in any way be seen to be taking advantage of the COVID scenario in terms of which we've all been. Don't be seen to be taking credit yourself for anything, but do, I suppose, fall into that optimistic bracket, because it's going to be really important for all consumers and audiences when they're looking to connect with brands now as we open up again.
Brilliant. Good way to end. That is it for this week's session. Thanks a million to all for joining us. Huge thanks to today's panel, to Antoinette, to Simon, to Stephen, and to John. I know John has been on with us the last couple of weeks. He won't be able to make it next week, but thanks a million, John, for your input in the last few weeks. Really appreciate it. If you haven't registered for next week, please do. You can register via pmlgroup.ie or Eventbrite. Next week is our final session in the series, and I'll be joined by Barbara Drury-Byrne from Clear Channel, Ilva Doyle from Dentsu, and James Byrne from PML Group. We'll be talking about the currency of speed, including how you can make a massive impact with dynamic out-of-home advertising. And we'll also be focusing on retail and shopper behavior. So we'll see you then next Thursday, the 3rd of June, 10:30 a.m. for the last session. So thanks a million. Have a great weekend outdoors again. Better weather this weekend. Bye-bye.